Well, I'm a storyteller, and I work in a fictional, imaginary world that is the future past. You have to think of me as a kind of old lady version of steampunk. It's taking place in the past, but it's also the future. So it's a drama, it's a theatrical reenactment, very much using advanced technology, and then we're all dressing up in old-fashioned clothes and enacting in this imaginary history space. I went to architecture school, so I built models of things, and I was a world builder. I went to an experimental architecture school, which was Columbia University, and it was during this period called paper architecture, when the economy was, everyone was bankrupt, and architects told stories and made visionary drawings. So that's how I started, and so the thing about world building and history was very much part of what I did from day one. So in fact, I went and moved to Berlin when I was when the wall came down. When I came over to Europe, I was making mixed media. And in fact, when I first came, I got an award from Valley Export, who was sitting on the committee for the Frauenstipendium for a Super 8 movie I made when I was in my 20s. Someone gave me a free ticket to Toy Story 1, and I went to see that in the Berlinale, and I went, whoa, what is that? For a world builder who built models and was interested in this kind of world that was half real and unreal, the possibility in virtual reality, in game space, just blew my mind, and I thought, I gotta learn that. The software that I use, which was used for scientific visualization and by the US military. So it was mainly used for war games, and it was used and then brought into commercial game space. So I fell in love with this. Here I was, a classicist, a nerd art historian who somehow was doing 3D. And I was so innocent that I had no idea that I was entering this world that was like a cartoon version of misogyny. I mean, they were military guys. I began teaching very, very early because I was one of the only people in New York art scene who could do 3D animation, so I was very employable. But the people who were studying with me were usually young men who wanted to go into the first-person shooter game industry. They were always trying to shock me. They would make pornographic things that were sort of hardcore, and I instead made very sensual, feminine, soft, erotic bodies, which they also were probably more shocked than I was. I'm a world builder, so we're sitting in one of my spaces and you hear people talking all over the place because it's very character generated, what I do. I take characters out of literature, out of history. They're usually, from the beginning, I perform them. There's a strong theater aspect and world building thing that's going on there. So the artificial real, which is embodied by storytelling, is what I do. When AI comes along, that to me is an expansion of the same processes that I've been doing for the past 27, 30 years. It keeps rolling forward, the technology expands, but it's always the same idea of creating a more and more hyper-realized fakeness. And this halfway space between something that is of my imagination, that's a model world, a fantasy world, a game world, is now made even more possible through AI, which is a radical expansion of the possibilities of real fakeness. That's why I combined studying art history, technology, you know, Toy Story, game space. It's this weird mixture of past, future in a theatrical, historical fantasy world. A lot of my recent work, not even recent, since Trump won the first period, I started working with the theme of the ruins, and that's a very important theme in this show. And the ruins is about the ruins of the American empire, basically. It's about the collapse of modernism as it was enacted in America, this idealistic place, and the failure of that. And I'm talking directly about system failure, empire failure, and performing people from that. So all of my, I'm working on a new piece which uses, in fact, the voices of Jefferson, of Gropius, of Henry Ford, who was a really Nazi sympathizer, bad guy, and then finally Jim Jones, who had a cult, and they all took mass suicide and took drugs, etc. So I'm interweaving these very dark stories that have to do with the dreams of America and its collapse into a very dark space. And that is in this show. The whole room, the project of the ruins, which is the second room back there, is 100% those people. You hear them speaking. I'm performing them, but my voice has been manipulated, so they sound very dark. And the new work that I'm doing also brings those characters as the four main characters in this kind of enactment drama that is a show by me, which is always about people chattering. And that's why you hear chattering everywhere. So that's pretty much what I'm working on since 2020.